What if I told you there was a baseball team so dominant, so perfectly constructed, that nearly a century later, no team has ever come close to matching their sheer dominance? A team that didn't just win games, they obliterated the competition with such ruthless efficiency that opposing pitchers would literally shake their heads in disbelief before the first pitch was even thrown. This is the story of the 1927 New York Yankees, the team that redefined what greatness looked like in Major League Baseball. The team that featured not one, not two, but multiple Hall of Famers in their absolute prime. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this wasn't just the greatest Yankees team ever assembled, it was the greatest team in baseball history. Period. The 1927 season didn't just happen in a vacuum. This was the heart of the Roaring '20s, when America was booming and baseball was truly becoming the national pastime. But what made this Yankees team special wasn't just the era they played in. It was how they completely dominated that era. Led by the legendary Miller Huggins, this team featured a lineup so feared that opposing managers would change their entire game strategy before the Yankees even stepped into the batter's box. We're talking about a team that won 110 games in a 154-game season. That's a .714 winning percentage that still stands as one of the greatest single-season records in baseball history. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. This wasn't just about one superstar carrying a team. This was about perfect chemistry, incredible depth, and a collection of players who each brought something unique to create baseball's most devastating machine. Let's start with the obvious. George Herman Babe Ruth was having the season of his life. And when I say the season of his life, I mean he was rewriting the record books in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Ruth hit 60 home runs in 1927. 60. To put that in perspective, the next closest player that season hit 18. Ruth hit more home runs by himself than most entire teams. But it wasn't just the quantity, it was how he hit them. Massive, towering shots that left pitchers and fans alike in complete awe. His 60th home run came on September 30th against Washington's Tom Zachary. The crowd at Yankee Stadium erupted as Ruth rounded the bases, knowing they had just witnessed history. That record would stand for 34 years until Roger Maris broke it in 1961. And even then, Maris needed 162 games to do what Ruth did in 154. But Ruth wasn't just a home run hitter. He batted .356 that season with 164 RBIs. Think about that. He was getting on base more than 1 out of every 3 at-bats while simultaneously terrorizing pitchers with his power. Opposing teams would literally walk him intentionally just to avoid the embarrassment of giving up another moonshot. Ruth's presence in the lineup was so intimidating that he made every other hitter in that Yankees order more dangerous. Pitchers couldn't pitch around everyone, and that's where the true genius of this team revealed itself. While everyone was watching Ruth chase history, Lou Gehrig was quietly having one of the greatest seasons any first baseman has ever had. And I mean quietly in the most ironic way possible, because Gehrig's numbers were absolutely thunderous. Gehrig hit .373 with 47 home runs and 175 RBIs. Let me repeat that. 175 RBIs. That's a number that seems almost impossible in today's game. Gehrig was driving in runs at a pace that was historic even by 1927 standards. What made Gehrig so dangerous was his consistency. While Ruth was the showman, the larger-than-life personality who captured headlines, Gehrig was the steady, reliable force who showed up every single day and delivered. He was already building the consecutive game streak that would define his career, but in 1927, he was also establishing himself as one of the most feared hitters in baseball. The Ruth-Gehrig combination was devastating. Pitchers couldn't pitch around Ruth because Gehrig was right behind him, ready to make them pay. And they couldn't pitch around Gehrig because the rest of the lineup was loaded with talent. It was a no-win situation for opposing pitchers, and the Yankees took full advantage. But this team wasn't just Ruth and Gehrig. The 1927 Yankees featured what became known as Murderer's Row, a lineup so deep and so dangerous that there was literally nowhere for opposing pitchers to hide. Tony Lazzeri at second base hit .309 with 18 home runs and 102 RBIs. In most lineups, Lazzeri would be the star. On this team, he was batting sixth. Bob Musil in left field contributed 24 home runs and 103 RBIs while hitting .337. Earl Combs, the leadoff hitter, batted .356 and scored 137 runs, setting the table perfectly for the power hitters behind him. Mark Koenig at shortstop hit .285 and provided solid defense, while Joe Dugan at third base was a steady veteran presence. Even the catching position was strong, with Pat Collins and Johnny Grabowski splitting duties effectively. What made this lineup truly special was the depth. There were no easy outs, no spots where pitchers could relax and coast through an at-bat. Every single hitter in that order was capable of changing the game with one swing, and opposing pitchers knew it. The psychological impact was enormous. Before games, opposing teams would watch Yankees batting practice, and you could see the confidence drain from their faces. They knew they were about to face something they'd never encountered before, a lineup with no weaknesses. While the offense gets more of the attention, the 1927 Yankees also had outstanding pitching. Wade Hoyt led the staff with a 22-7 record and a 2.63 ERA. Herb Pennock, the crafty left-hander, went 19-8 with a 3.00 ERA. Urban Shocker contributed 18 wins, and Dutch Ruther added 13 more. This wasn't just a collection of good pitchers. This was a deep, talented staff that could match up with anyone. Hoyt was the ace, a pitcher who could dominate games when the Yankees needed a big performance. Pennock was the veteran craftsman who knew how to pitch to contact and let his defense work behind him. The pitching staff understood their role perfectly. They didn't need to be perfect because they knew their offense would score runs, but they were good enough to keep games close and let that incredible lineup do what it did best: score runs in bunches and demoralize the opposition. Wiley Moore, primarily a relief pitcher, went 19-7 with a 2.28 ERA and led the league with 13 saves. Even their bullpen was ahead of its time, with Moore serving as one of baseball's first true closers. 1927 Yankees didn't just win games, they destroyed the competition. They finished 19 games ahead of the second-place Philadelphia Athletics. 19 games. In a sport where a few games can separate first place from last place, the Yankees created a gap so wide it was almost embarrassing. They led the American League in runs scored, home runs, batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. Their team batting average was .307. Think about that. As a team, they were getting hits in nearly 1 out of every 3 at-bats. Their team slugging percentage was .489, a number that would be impressive for individual players, let alone an entire team. But it wasn't just the offensive numbers. They also led the league in fewest runs allowed, showing that this was a complete team in every sense of the word. When you can outscore everyone and prevent runs better than anyone else, you're not just good, you're historically dominant. The Yankees scored 975 runs that season while allowing just 599. That run differential of plus .376 is staggering. They were outscoring opponents by an average of more than 2 runs per game. And in baseball, that kind of consistent margin is almost impossible to overcome. After dominating the regular season, the Yankees faced the Pittsburgh Pirates in the World Series. The Pirates were a good team. They had won 94 games in the National League pennant. But they were about to learn what the rest of the American League had learned all season long. Nobody could match the 1927 Yankees. The series was over before it really began. The Yankees swept the Pirates in 4 games, outscoring them 23-10. but even those numbers don't tell the full story of how dominant they were. Game 1 saw the Yankees win 5-4 in a relatively close contest, but games 2, 3, and 4 were complete demolitions. They won Game 2 by a score of 6-2. Game 3 was 8-1, and they closed out the series with a 4-3 victory that was much more comfortable than the final score indicated. Ruth hit .400 in the World Series with 2 home runs. Gehrig batted .308 and drove in 4 runs. But it was the complete team effort that stood out. Different players stepped up in different games, showing the incredible depth that had made them so dominant all season long. The Pirates, to their credit, fought hard, but they were simply overmatched. This wasn't about effort or heart, it was about talent, and the Yankees had more of it at every position. The 1927 Yankees didn't just win a championship, they changed how people thought about what was possible in baseball. They showed that a team could be so dominant, so perfectly constructed, that they could make winning look almost effortless. This team set the standard for what championship organizations should look like. The combination of star power, depth, pitching, defense, and leadership became the blueprint that successful teams have tried to follow ever since. But perhaps most importantly, the 1927 Yankees represented baseball at its absolute peak during the sport's golden age. This was when baseball was truly America's pastime, when players were larger-than-life figures who captured the nation's imagination. Ruth, Gehrig, and the rest of that team weren't just athletes. They were cultural icons. The impact extended far beyond the single season. This team proved that with the right combination of talent, chemistry, and leadership, a baseball team could achieve something approaching perfection. They set records that still stand today and created memories that baseball fans still talk about nearly a century later. So why do the 1927 Yankees still hold the title as baseball's greatest team? It's not just the numbers, though the numbers are incredible. It's not just the star power, though they had more Hall of Famers than most teams could dream of. It's the combination of everything. The perfect balance of power and average, the depth throughout the lineup, the solid pitching staff, and the leadership that held it all together. This was a team that had no weaknesses and multiple strengths at every position. Modern teams have won more games in a season, but they played more games. Modern teams have had great individual seasons, but none have combined individual excellence with team dominance the way the 1927 Yankees did. Watch highlights of that team. When you read the stories from that season, you get the sense that you're witnessing something that can never be replicated. Baseball has changed too much. The game has evolved in ways that make that kind of dominance nearly impossible. But for one magical season in 1927, everything came together perfectly. The right players, the right manager, the right chemistry, and the right moment in baseball history. The result was a team that didn't just win, they redefined what winning could look like. The 1927 New York Yankees weren't just a great baseball team. They were a perfect storm of talent, timing, and execution that created something truly special in sports history. From Ruth's record-breaking 60 home runs to Gehrig's incredible consistency, from Murderer's Row to a World Series sweep, this team showed us what baseball perfection looks like. Nearly a century later, we're still talking about them, still measuring other great teams against their standard. And honestly, no team has ever quite measured up. What do you think? Do the 1927 Yankees deserve the title of the greatest team in baseball history? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more legendary baseball stories every week.